Captain Kim Tae-ho pressed his palm against the cold metal of the viewport, staring into the endless sea of stars that had once filled him with hope. Now, after 3 months of exploration beyond Earth's solar system, those same stars seemed to mock him with their silence. "Sir, we're approaching the 7th planetary system," Navigator Choi Minho called from his station, his voice carrying the same weary confusion that had plagued the crew for weeks. "Long-range scanners show the same pattern as before." Tae-ho nodded slowly, though his stomach churned with unease. "The same pattern. It's always the same impossible pattern." Engineer Lee Sojin looked up from her console, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of her instruments. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the surface. Multiple cities, industrial complexes, spaceports. The population has to be in the hundreds of millions. Any communications?" Tae-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. "Communications." Officer Park Ji-min shook her head, her fingers dancing across her control panel with practiced efficiency. "Nothing, sir. Complete radio silence. No broadcasts, no chatter between ships, no civilian communications. It's like they're all—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Like they're all holding their breath." The exploration vessel Defiance drifted closer to the blue-green world below. Through the enhanced viewers, they could see the cities clearly now. Massive structures of gleaming metal and crystals stretched toward the sky in perfect geometric patterns. Every building was identical in height and design. Every street formed perfect straight lines or exact circles. There was no chaos, no random growth, no signs of individual creativity or choice. "Look at the traffic patterns," Minho whispered, filled with wonder and horror. On the planet's surface, millions of vehicles moved in perfect synchronization. They flowed through the streets like water through carefully designed channels, never stopping, never changing lanes, never deviating from their predetermined paths. Not a single accident, not a single traffic jam, not a single moment of unpredictable human behavior. "It's beautiful," Sojin murmured, then immediately looked ashamed. It's terrifying. But it's also ... perfect. Tae-ho watched as massive cargo ships lifted off from the planet's surface, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. Dozens of vessels rose simultaneously, their flight paths forming elegant spirals that never intersected, never conflicted. It was like watching a carefully choreographed dance performed by machines. "Kamen, can you detect any control signals? Any central command coordinating all this movement?" The communications officer frowned, adjusting her instruments. "That's the strange part, Captain. I'm not detecting any command frequencies. No central control tower, no traffic management systems, no coordinating signals at all. They're just moving together." "How is that possible?" Minho asked, his navigator's mind struggling to comprehend traffic patterns that required no navigation. "Maybe they're all connected somehow," Sojin suggested. "Some kind of biological or technological network we can't detect." Tae-ho moved to the observation deck, where the ship's most powerful telescopes gave him a closer view of the planet's inhabitants. What he saw made his blood run cold. The beings on the surface looked almost human, but their behavior was completely alien. They moved in groups, but not like crowds of individuals. Instead, they flowed like single organisms, turning corners at exactly the same moment, stopping and starting in perfect unison. When one group encountered another, they merged seamlessly, like streams of water flowing together. "Captain Jimin's." The voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm detecting similar patterns on every inhabited world we've scanned. Different species, different technologies, but the same behavior. The same ... silence." "How many worlds?" Tae-ho asked, though he dreaded the answer. 47 confirmed, sir. And the long-range sensors suggest hundreds more throughout this sector." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They had expected to find diverse civilizations, chaotic and vibrant with individual expression. Instead, they had discovered a galaxy of perfect order, where billions of beings moved with the precision of clockwork. "There's something else," Sojin said quietly. "The energy readings from each world are identical, not similar, identical. It's if every planet is running the same programs, using the same systems, following the same ... instructions." Tae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. Instructions from who? None of them had an answer. As the Defiance continued its orbit, they observed the planet's night cycle. The cities didn't sleep. They simply shifted into different patterns of activity. Lights dimmed and brightened in perfect waves across the continents. The flow of traffic changed, but never stopped, never broke its rhythm. It's like they're not individuals at all, Minho said softly. They're more like cells in a giant organism, or pieces in a machine, Sojin added. GMN suddenly straightened at her console. Captain, I'm detecting an energy pulse from the planet's surface. It's very faint, but it's synchronized with the movement patterns below. What kind of pulse? Not sure. The frequency is unlike anything in our databases. It's almost like a heartbeat, or a signal keeping time. Tejo stared at the perfect world below, where millions of beings lived in absolute harmony, absolute order, absolute silence. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible question began to form. What if this wasn't civilization at all? If it was something else entirely? The alarm on the bridge of the Defiance screamed through the silence like a wounded animal. Captain Kim Tae-ho spun around from the viewport just as three massive ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding his vessel in a perfect triangle formation. Where did they come from? Navigator Choi Minho shouted, his hands flying over his controls as he tried to track the ship's approach vectors. I don't know, Communications Officer Park Jimin replied, her voice shaking. They weren't on any of our sensors. They just ... appeared. The alien vessels were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their hulls gleamed like polished silver, curved and smooth as if they had been grown rather than built. Along their sides, a strange spiral symbol pulsed with soft blue light, hypnotic and somehow familiar. Captain Engineer Lee Sojin called from her station. I'm reading massive energy signatures from all three ships. Their power output is beyond anything we've ever seen. Tae-ho took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. This was the moment they had trained for, dreamed of, and feared. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. Gimin, open a channel. Standard first contact protocols. Before Gimin could respond, the communication system activated by itself. A voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect Korean with an accent that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. At once, unknown vessel, you will submit to boarding and integration into the collective. The words hit the crew like a physical blow. Tae-ho felt a strange pressure in his head, as if something was trying to push its way into his thoughts. Around him, his crew members blinked and shook their heads, looking confused and uncomfortable. This is Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earth. Vessel Defiance, he replied, fighting against the odd sensation in his mind. We are explorers from the planet Earth. We come in peace and request dialogue. On the lead alien ship, Commander Vexstar stared at his communication display in complete bewilderment. The pale, hairless alien had served the Dominion for over 2 centuries, commanding patrol fleets across dozens of star systems. In all that time, he had never encountered anything like this. Repeat your last transmission, Vexstar commanded. His telepathic voice carrying the full force of the voice, the psychic network that connected every mind in the galaxy. Negative, came the impossible response. We're explorers from Earth. We come in peace, but we'll maintain our sovereignty. The bridge of Vexstar's ship fell into stunned silence. His crew members, their minds linked to the voice since birth, could barely comprehend what they were hearing. These strange beings had not only heard the command, they had refused it. Sir, one of his officers whispered, they're not responding to integration protocols. The voice, it's not working. On them, Vexstar's 3 eyes widened in shock. Such a thing was impossible. The voice was absolute. It connected every thinking being in the galaxy, from the smallest worker drone to the mighty overlords themselves. No mind could resist its call. No will could stand against its power. Back on the Defiance, engineer Lee Sojin was studying. Her instruments, with growing alarm, Captain, they're broadcasting some kind of energy field. It's aimed directly at our brains. What kind of energy? Tae-ho asked, still feeling the strange pressure in his head. I've never seen anything like it. The frequency matches human neural patterns, but it's trying to override them somehow. Like it wants to take control of our thoughts. Communications Officer Park Jimin looked up from her console, her face pale. Sir, I'm detecting similar energy patterns from every ship and planet we've encountered. That strange pulse we found before, it's the same thing. The pieces began to fall into place in Taeho's mind. The perfect cities, the synchronized movements, the complete silence across an entire galaxy. It wasn't technology controlling these civilizations, it was something else, something that could reach into minds and make them obey. They're trying to control us, he said quietly. On the alien ship, Commander Vexstar was reporting to his superiors, his voice filled with panic. Central Command, we have encountered an anomaly. Yes. Unknown beings that appear immune to the voice. Request immediate reinforcement and guidance. The response came instantly, carried through the telepathic network that spanned the galaxy. Every overlord, every commander, every being connected to the voice heard the impossible news. There were minds in the universe that could not be controlled. Impossible, came the reply from the capital world. Sentient beings are subject to the voice. Increase power and force integration. Vexstar obeyed, channeling more energy through his ship's telepathic transmitters. The spiral symbols along his hull blazed brighter as psychic energy flooded toward the human vessel. On the Defiance, the crew felt the increased pressure like a hammer blow to their minds. Sojin gripped her console as her head pounded, pressed his palms against his temples. Jimin's nose began to bleed from the psychic assault, but none of them obeyed. None of them surrendered their will. It's not working, Taeho said through gritted teeth. Whatever they're doing, human brains don't respond to it. Captain Sojin gasped. I'm reading massive power fluctuations from their ships. And something else. There are disturbances appearing on nearby planets. Energy patterns we detected before. They're changing. Unknown to either the humans or their alien captors, something unprecedented was happening across the star system. The presence of minds that could not be controlled was creating interference in the voice itself. On planets below, beings who had moved in perfect synchronization for centuries suddenly stumbled. Workers paused in their tasks, looking around in confusion. For brief moments, thoughts that had been buried for generations began to surface. The perfect order of the galaxy had encountered its first crack, and that crack was spreading. Communications Officer Park Jimin sat hunched over her console, her eyes red from staring at the display for hours. The strange energy patterns from the alien ships had given her an idea. She had been working non-stop to decode what she was hearing. There, she whispered, adjusting the frequency filters one more time. Captain, you need to hear this. Captain. Kim Taeho moved to her station, followed by the rest of the crew. Giman activated the speakers, and at first they heard only the monotone hum of the voice, the same boring signal they had detected from every world. Wait for it, Jimin said, her fingers dancing over the controls. Suddenly, beneath the steady hum, they heard something else. Voices, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, whispering in languages they didn't understand. The voices were quiet, scared, but they were definitely there. What are they saying? Engineer Lee Sojin asked. I don't know the languages, Jimin replied, but I can guess. Listen to the tone. They sound like people trying to talk without being heard, like prisoners whispering in their cells. Navigator Choi Minho leaned closer to the speakers. How is this possible? I thought that mind control thing affected everyone. In the galaxy? Maybe it did, Captain Taeho said slowly. But something's changed. Something about our presence here is weakening their control. On the industrial world of Kepler 438b, a worker named Thakmer stopped in the middle of assembling a machine component. For the first time in 20 years, he wasn't thinking about his task. Instead, a memory flashed through his mind, a small child with purple skin like his own. Laughing as she chased floating bubbles in their garden, Thekmer's hands began to shake. He had a daughter. How could he have forgotten? Her name was Lila. His daughter's name was Lila. Around him, Other workers continued their tasks, but Thakmer could see some of them pausing too, their faces showing confusion and something else hope. On the agricultural planet of Proxima 3, a farmer named Zyra was harvesting grain when she suddenly remembered what food used to taste like. For decades, she had eaten only what the voice told her to eat, when it told her to eat. But now she remembered choosing her own meals, savoring flavors she enjoyed. Eating because she was hungry rather than because she was commanded. She picked up a piece of the grain she was harvesting and, for the first time in 30 years, made her own choice. She ate it. The taste exploded in her mouth, sweet, nutty, alive. Tears rolled down her green cheeks as she remembered what it meant to want something. Back on the Defiance, Captain Tejo was making the most important decision of his life. "We're going to help them," he announced. "These people are waking up, and they're going to need our support." Sir Sojin said carefully, "We're talking about interfering with an entire galactic civilization. This could start a war." "Look around," Tejo replied, gesturing toward the viewports. "This isn't civilization. This is slavery on a scale we can barely imagine. If we can help break these chains, we have a duty to try." Gimin worked day and night to establish contact with the growing resistance. She created new communication methods that could hide beneath the voice's frequencies, allowing the awakening beings to talk to each other without being detected. "Hello," came the first clear message from the surface of Kepler 438b. We can think again. How is this possible?" "You were never meant to be slaves," Jimin responded. "We're here to help you remember who you really are." Engineer Lee Sojin became a teacher to beings who had forgotten how to learn. In secret workshops, hidden from the voice's sensors, she showed alien rebels how to build their own communication devices. But more importantly, she taught them something they had lost: curiosity. "Why does this work?" asked a young alien, who looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. "Because you asked why," Sojin replied with a smile. "That's the most important question in the universe, and you just remembered how to ask it." She showed them how to create weapons that fought ideas rather than bodies. Radio transmitters that could broadcast free thoughts, signal jammers that could create dead zones where the voice couldn't reach. Most importantly, she taught them to trust their own minds. Navigator Choi Minho found himself coordinating the most unusual military campaign in history. The aliens who joined their cause had no experience with independent strategy or creative tactics. They had followed orders for so long that they had forgotten how to improvise. "The Dominion ships always attack in perfect formation," he explained to a group of rebel commanders. "They expect us to do the same, so we won't. We'll attack from unexpected angles, change our plans in the middle of battle, and do things that make no sense to their computers." "But how can we coordinate without central command?" asked a rebel leader whose species looked like walking trees. "You don't coordinate," Minho replied. "You improvise. You adapt.
Right.
You think for yourselves." That's what they can't understand, and that's how we'll beat them. The rebellion spread from world to world like wildfire. On each planet, beings who had been nothing more than worker drones began to remember their names, their families, their dreams. They remembered art and music, and the joy of making their own choices. The Dominion forces tried to respond, but their tactics were designed for fighting other controlled minds. When faced with the chaos of truly independent thought, their perfect strategies fell apart. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was learning to think for itself. And it was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Grand Overlord Kethmarin had ruled the galaxy for over 800 years. His ancient mind controlled the voice that connected billions of beings across thousands of worlds, never in all. His centuries of power had he felt fear. Until now, the contamination spreads. He spoke into the psychic network, his thoughts reaching every Dominion commander instantly. Entire sectors are falling into chaos. The humans must be destroyed, and every mind they have touched must be cleansed. From his throne room on the capital world, Kethmaran sent orders to 1,000 fleets. Ships that had never known defeat began moving toward human positions. Their crews moved in perfect silence, their minds linked as one, their purpose absolute. But Captain Kim Tae-ho was not waiting for them to arrive. "We can't fight them the way they expect," he told his expanded crew aboard the Defiance. Around him stood not just his original team, but dozens of alien rebels who had joined their cause. "They think like a single mind. We think like individuals. That's our advantage." Navigator Choi Min-ho spread his tactical displays across the bridge. "Sir, intelligence reports show they're sending 300 ships to our position. They're moving in perfect formation, just like we expected." Good Tae-ho replied with a grim smile. "Then they won't expect what we're about to do." Instead of gathering his fleet for a traditional battle, Tae-ho split his forces into dozens of small groups. Each group had its own mission, its own target, its own plan. No central command controlled them all. No single strategy guided their actions. Engineer Lee Sojin was aboard a rebel ship heading toward the industrial world of Vega Prime. Around her, alien engineers worked frantically to build new weapons. Not weapons that destroyed ships, but weapons that destroyed ideas. "Remember," she told them, "we're not just fighting their military, we're fighting their entire way of thinking. Every system you sabotage, every network you disrupt, creates more dead zones where the voice can't reach." A young rebel engineer, her blue skin covered in technical diagrams, looked up from her work. "But won't that hurt our own people?" "No," Sojin replied. "It will free them." The battle for the Centauri sector began when the Dominion fleet arrived to find ... nothing. The human forces had scattered like leaves in the wind. Instead of one large target, the Dominion faced hundreds of small ones, each moving independently, each attacking different objectives. Commander Vexstar, leading one of the Dominion squadrons, felt his confidence crumble as he tried to coordinate a response. Central Command: "The enemy forces are not following any recognizable pattern. They attack, retreat, then attack again from completely different positions." "Adapt," came the reply through the voice. "Predict their movements and respond accordingly." But how could he predict chaos? The human ships seemed to make decisions on their own, changing course for no apparent reason, attacking targets that made no strategic sense. It was like trying to fight a storm. Communications officer Park Ji-min was coordinating the rebellion from a hidden base on an asteroid. Her communication networks didn't follow military protocols. Instead, each rebel cell operated independently, sharing information but making its own decisions. "Phoenix team, this is base. We've detected a weak point in the enemy's eastern flank," she broadcast. "Copy that, base," came the reply. "But we've found something better. There's a communication relay here that's controlling 3 planets. We're going to take it out instead." In the old days, such disobedience would have been punished. But Ji-min smiled. "Good thinking. Do it." The chaos was working. For every move the Dominion made, the rebels made 3 different countermoves. When the enemy concentrated their forces in one area, the rebels attacked from 5 other directions. When the Dominion tried to protect their supply lines, the rebels ignored the supplies and hit the communication networks instead. Navigator Choi Min-ho was aboard a rebel cruiser that had just captured a Dominion ship without firing a shot. "How did you do it?" he asked the alien captain. "We pretended to surrender," the captain replied, his tentacles waving with excitement. "When they came to board us, we asked them why they were fighting. Some of them started thinking about it, and the voice couldn't control them anymore. They joined us instead." The turning point came when engineer Lee Sojin and her team reached Vega Prime. The massive industrial world was defended by orbital platforms and patrol ships. It had a different plan. "We're not going to attack the defenses," she told her team. "We're going to attack the planet's central processing core." Every world controlled by the voice had a central node where the psychic commands were processed and distributed. Node was destroyed. The entire planet would be cut off from the network. The assault on Vega Prime was like nothing the Dominion had ever faced. Instead of a direct attack, the rebels infiltrated the planet's surface using dozens of different methods. Some disguised themselves as workers, others hid in cargo shipments. A few simply walked through the front gates and started asking questions. When Sojin's team reached the central processing core, they found it was more than just a machine. It was a living thing, a giant brain that had been built to amplify the voice's power across the entire planet. I almost feel sorry for it, Sojin said as she prepared the charges that would destroy the core. It's been a slave, too. Explosion that destroyed Vega Prime's control nodes sent shockwaves through the voice itself. Suddenly, 12 million beings on the planet's surface stopped what they were doing and looked around in confusion. Then they began to scream. Not screams of pain, but screams of joy, of recognition, of freedom. Workers remembered their families. Artists remembered their dreams. Children remembered how to play. The psychic feedback from 12 million minds suddenly breaking free was so powerful that it created a dead zone spanning 3 entire star systems. Ships in the area found their crews waking up from decades of mental slavery. Sojin stood in the streets of Vega Prime's capital city, watching as people embraced each other with tears streaming down their faces. A woman with silver skin ran up to her and hugged her tightly. "Thank you," the woman sobbed. "I remember my son now. I remember his name." Captain Tejo's voice crackled through Sojin's communicator. "We didn't just win a battle today. We gave them back their souls." But even as they celebrated, they knew the war was far from over. The Dominion still controlled most of the galaxy. And now they knew exactly how dangerous the humans truly were. The journey to Dominion Prime took 3 months, and every day the fleet grew larger. Ships from liberated worlds joined the human-led alliance. Their crews a mix of species that had never worked together before. Captain Kim Taeho stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching through the viewport as thousands of vessels traveled together toward their final destination. "I never imagined anything like this," Navigator Choi Minho said quietly. "A year ago, we were just 4 people on an exploration mission. Now we're leading an army to free an entire galaxy." The capital system of the Dominion appeared before them like a fortress of stars. Massive space stations surrounded the central world, their weapons aimed outward in perfect defensive formations. Energy shields shimmered between the stations, creating layers of protection that had never been breached in 1,000 years. But what made everyone nervous wasn't the weapons or the shields. It was the silence. No communications from the surface. Communications Officer Park GM reported, "No ship movements, no defensive preparations. It's like they're just ... waiting." Engineer Lee Sojin studied her instruments with growing concern. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups from the planet's surface. Whatever they're planning, it's big." On Dominion Prime, Grand Overlord Kethmarin sat in his crystal throne, his ancient mind reaching out through the voice to touch every corner of the galaxy. He could feel the chaos spreading, world after world falling to the human infection. But here, at the center of his power, he would make his final stand. Around him stood the other overlords. Their telepathic abilities combined and focused through massive machines that had been built over centuries. These were the ultimate voice amplifiers, devices that could reach across space itself to control minds on distant worlds. "They come," Kethmarin spoke without moving his lips, his thoughts carried instantly to his fellow rulers. "The rebels approach with their chaos and their noise, but silence will return to the galaxy. Order will be restored." He raised one pale hand, and the machines around him began to hum with power. The attack came without warning. Captain Tejo felt it first as a pressure in his skull, then as a crushing weight that tried to push down on his thoughts around him. His human crew staggered but remained standing. "It's the same mind control they tried before," he said through gritted teeth, "but much stronger." The psychic wave spread outward from Dominion Prime like an invisible tsunami. It was the ultimate voice, designed to crush the will of every thinking being in the galaxy and return them to perfect obedience. But something unexpected happened. The liberated aliens in the fleet didn't collapse under the mental assault. Instead, they began to fight back. Communications Officer Park Jimin watched her instruments in amazement as her sensors detected something impossible. "Captain, the freed aliens are generating their own psychic response. They're not just resisting the control, they're pushing back against it." Throughout the fleet, millions of beings who had learned to think for themselves were discovering they had more power than they realized. Workers from Vega Prime remembered what it felt like to make their own choices. Farmers from agricultural worlds recalled the taste of food they had chosen to eat. Artists who had been silent for centuries began to sing their own songs. "We will not be slaves again," came a voice over the communication system. It was spoken in a dozen different languages by 100 different species. But the message was the same. Engineer Lee Sojin felt her breath catch as she realized what was happening. "They're creating their own voice," she whispered. "Voice of freedom instead of control." The collision between the ultimate voice and this new voice of rebellion created something no one had expected. Psychic energy crackled through space like lightning. The very fabric of telepathic control that had held the galaxy together for 1,000 years began to tear apart. On Dominion Prime, Grand Overlord Kethmarin screamed as feedback from the psychic collision burned through his mind. His perfect control network was shattering like glass, and he could feel every crack as it spread across the galaxy. "Impossible," he gasped, his ancient voice finally speaking aloud for the first time in centuries. "They are creating chaos. Pure, mindless chaos."
"No!"
came a voice from the fleet above. It was Captain Tejo. His words carried through space by the rebel communication networks. "We're creating choice. The right to think our own thoughts and make our own decisions." The psychic shockwave spread outward from the capital system at faster than light speed. It traveled along the same networks that had once carried the voice's commands. But now it carried something else entirely. Freedom engineer Lee Sojin watched her displays light up as communication signals began appearing from every corner of the galaxy. "Captain, every world in the network is coming online. They're all trying to talk at once. Planets thousands of light years away." Beings who had moved in perfect silence for generations suddenly stopped what they were doing. Factory workers looked around and wondered why they were building the same thing over and over. Soldiers questioned why they were marching. Children asked their first independent questions in centuries. The noise was incredible. After 1,000 years of silence, the galaxy erupted in conversation. Millions of species began talking, singing, arguing, laughing, and crying all at the same time. Navigator Choi Min-ho plotted the expanding wave of liberation on his charts.
"Sir."
The psychic network has completely collapsed. Every world that was connected to the voice is experiencing spontaneous liberation. Captain Tejo smiled as he listened to the beautiful chaos filling the communication channels. Voices and languages he had never heard before were asking questions, making plans, and simply enjoying the freedom to speak. The galaxy had been silent for 1,000 years. It was controlled by a single voice that demanded perfect obedience. But now, millions of worlds were learning to roar with their own voices, and the universe would never be quiet again.